Всем добрый день.
Hello, everyone.
Добрый день, Михаил Лайтман.
Dr. Lightman, hello.
Мы
Hello, everyone.
эпоха посткоронавируса.
We're continuing with our course, the post-corona era. This is our fifth meeting, and today we're going to talk about the need for social connection. On our previous lessons, we talked about the interactions between people, interaction between man and nature. As an example, I'd like to show a few chains of connections. Suppose the collision of galaxies forms stars. The formation of stars forms the formation of iron. Iron runs through our veins when our hearts beat, and this is one way in which we're all connected. Suppose bacteria that lived 2.5 billion years ago that created oxygen. Thanks to that, we're living today, thanks to their photosynthesis process. Suppose there's a common conscience. Emotions and experience from previous generations and so on. This way, we're connected by our common heartbeat, breathing, consciousness, and a question to you. We're close to each other. We understand this, but we don't feel it. In your opinion, how are we connected? We are connected in one common soul, meaning our common qualities, feelings, experiences, thoughts. All these things are common. None of us has anything personal at all. Personal things, the only personal thing is to feel this common connection of ours to this system or not. But if you don't have that, if we do not connect to it, then we feel alone as individual creatures, and that's it. But this is only a false imagination of our true state. In everything, there's not even a single cell, a single thought, a single desire, awakening, nothing that I'd have of my own. Understand, but why don't we feel this? We don't feel it because our ego disconnects us from each other, and we do not feel each other, even though that we completely depend, that we're completely interconnected, but this way we do not feel ourselves. So our ego separates us, not allowing us to feel. It as if makes us unconscious, that we do not understand the complete and full interconnection that exists between us. A listener is asking, how are the particular and general connected? If some bacteria that secreted molecules in oxygen, not knowing anything about this, influenced our life this much, how can each of us influence all of nature? I don't know about oxygen and molecules. What I do know is that all of nature comes from one source. And therefore, whatever new forms you have in nature, they come as a result of the interconnection between them, even though that maybe we don't feel this, we can't reveal this now, we can't research this, but all of nature is integral. And there's not even a single particle in nature that would suddenly start developing on its own, out of nothing. Could we assume that our personal personal life, just like the life of some bacteria that lived for 2 weeks, created oxygen, and thanks to it, thousands of people are living. The same, the life of each of us, its meaning is that later on, some super being will exist or something, or is the life of each of us important? The life of each of us is important because we are particles of that super mechanism called soul, and it is one for all of us. Why is man the crown of nature? Maybe there are more developed creatures in nature that our life depends on. From what we see, what we observe in our system of understanding and feelings, man is the crown of civilization, even though that it's hard to call us the crown of anything, due to our ego that absolutely breaks everything. But from the system of the still vegetative, animate, and man is the uppermost or highest being, even though harmful, very corrupted, but the uppermost, superior. And if he will correct himself and he can change himself, then he will truly be superior in all aspects. We are the final goal of creation, not in the form that we are in now, but in the form that we can and should reach. And what form of existence will this be? It will be a form of existence where we will be able to rise above our egoistic nature that we were born and developed in. After this development of our egoistic nature, we come to the understanding that this nature is evil, that it is opposed to our general system of the general integral desire, and when we will correct it, our egoistic desire into an altruistic desire, our division and distancing to connection and proximity, then we will truly become the uppermost degree in nature. On our previous lesson, we talked a lot about egoism, that it's the motivating force of nature, and there is such a question that our egoistic nature as if has two sides. On the one hand, the desire for wealth, it developed an equality. On the other hand, it created communication and many other things. The desire for power created many wars. On the other hand, it developed government and so on. Science, on the one hand, it gave a lot in technology and our technological advancement, development, knowledge, health. We live longer. On the other hand, we see that there are wars and the danger of complete annihilation. There are always these two opposites. Today, we have a unique situation where the egoistic temptations no longer work. What will be the force, that motivating force in the post-corona era, if the ego no longer works, meaning nature doesn't allow for it to work, for us to use it, and from the inside, it's no longer that attracting. I think that there will come the recognition that we have to advance in a completely opposite direction to our ego, and to develop ourselves as a human society, and the interaction between the human society and the rest of the degrees, levels in nature, as completely interacted and altruistic. If we will start acting this way, understanding that we have to go against our egoistic nature, that we have to connect, that we have to care for one another according to the law of love another as yourself, and to advance that way, that we have to come to a state where love covers all crimes, meaning complete interconnection, complete care and concern for one another, then in that case, we will be able to overcome this potential barrier of our nature in such a way that we will start feeling the good force that enlivens all of nature, sustains it, and this way we will achieve the revelation of the Creator. So it's a kind of transformation that suppose today I get pleasure out of caring only for myself, I can care for others too, but to the measure to which it fulfills me. And you're saying that man will start getting pleasure from caring for others? Yes. And how can that transformation happen? Under the influence of our desire and the upper quality of the upper force. Then what do we need the ego for? In order for us to reach this degree ourselves against our own ego, in oppositeness to it, for us to attain the level of recognition of the need to care, to be interacted with one another in a good and nice way. This is our goal, our task. So our nature will not be destroyed, our ego. No, we don't. We have to work above it, against it. How does the animate or the ego of animals differ from the human ego? Everything comes to us from nature. We don't have anything of our own. None of our qualities, feelings, forces don't exist in us. It all comes from nature. The only question is, how do we use these forces, qualities that we got from nature? How do you understand the meaning of man is an egoistic social creature? Egoistic, yes. Because of the ego, he's a social creature, because he needs a society in order to realize his ego. There are many examples in society, and you brought this as an example, like Mowgli. There are a few dozens of cases in the world where a human child was lost in the woods, for example, grew up with animals, and it's very interesting that, not like in the story, but they couldn't come back to civilization, couldn't become human beings. They did have simple skills, but that's it. What's unique about human society that makes us human beings? We, from generation to generation, develop new laws of commutation in society. And we start adjusting ourselves in such a way that we're not human children, but the children of human society. And this is an artificial state, creation. And therefore animals can't become a part of our society. They can be next to us, they can somehow understand their place next to us. For them it's not a problem. They feel it. What's good for them, what's not. But a man, if he perceives the surrounding environment as this, like animals that were, like those that were raised among animals, a person by that loses his ability to adapt himself, adjust himself to society, because man has to be raised by, educated by human beings. It's not like an animal that you feed and it will grow. Man, it has enough instincts that it was born with in order to get along in nature. For man, it's not enough. The instinct that he gets from nature completely can't fulfill his connection with the social environment that he's in, and therefore he can't do anything. no matter how he is in and of himself, unless he has developed these social ties from young age, from birth, feeling his mother, family, and so on, then he will not be able to fulfill this. The need for social ties is something that, for social connection, it's something that we have from birth. Our first social partner is our mother. A person, if he is in solitude, he even reacts to it on the physical level. The human brain reacts to isolation like to any other kind of pain. People isolated die many times of different kinds of illnesses. Good social connections give more satisfaction than money. There were even such experiments that trust at work between co-workers is equal to the pleasure coming from a 30% add to your salary. Meaning partnership gives better results than competition. And the question is, can you explain the paradox? We understand the importance of social connections, but we're not, concerned with developing it on the social level, on the political level. No country has such a plan to develop this. What's the reason? People understand that it bears good results, but the reason is our same ego. The thing is that maybe we would like this, but alongside with this, we have an evil nature, our ego, that does not allow us to relate nicely to each other, but to the contrary, puts us in constant opposition with one another, in constant battle, and so on. Meaning there are such initial parameters in our nature that we can't simply rise above. And even though that good relations in society could bring tremendous benefit to society and altogether give society an immeasurable greater level of development and so on, safety and everything, can you imagine were we to relate to each other as one family by simply using the money that we spend on weapons, how we could live like in heaven, really. So maybe we don't need that. It's against nature. Maybe let's live according to the laws of our ego. We're living according to the laws of our ego. We can't live according to the laws of the jungle, otherwise we'll kill each other, and therefore we have certain regulations of how can we allow to use force and where not. These are different codexes and other frameworks that we are trying to exist in. But in general, humanity is miserable, and today it is coming to the conclusion that it can't hide from our connection. The connection between us is necessary. And on the one hand, we're demanded to become more global, interconnected. On the other hand, our ego doesn't allow us to. You always say that we have to live according to the law of nature, see what happens in nature, and we should copy that. I see that in nature everything's natural, egoistic. Animals eat each other. The chain of food, we are the extension of nature, or no. The thing is that what happens in nature is actually a reflection of human society, where each eats the others. The thing is that the uppermost level in nature influences lower levels, and therefore, according to how human how humanity is, how our society, the human society, is built. We're influencing the lower levels of nature, and therefore a wolf cannot dwell with a sheep, and so on and so forth. It only depends on our interactions on the higher level, on the higher social human level. All of nature will change. So, an example of the collective intellect that exists in nature in cooperation. Biologists found out that many biological organisms can take collective decisions. Suppose bacteria, once there's some kind of chemical substance secreted, it's like voting or something. That could be some kind of alert or something. That's how they inform each other, and they can take mutual decisions this way. A school of fish identifies predators better when they're together than alone. Very smart people with a very high IQ can't solve problems that a collective can. There is a paradox here still. That nature, on the one hand, all throughout its development, develops us as individuals. On the other hand, we see that it's not the strongest that survives, but those that are most fit to cooperate. How do you solve this paradox? Individualism needn't be in contradiction with integrality, mutuality, the correct combination between us. It's like in any other system where you have separate elements, like in a computer and other systems. There are separate elements. Each of them is very important. Each of them has to be whole and complete. But the interactions between them have to be on such a level that they experience such connections that precisely the interconnection between them leads them. And therefore, one does not contradict the others. I would like to collect a collective consisting of geniuses on the one hand, on the other hand, that between them there would be complete connection, interaction, mutuality. Otherwise, what will come as a result of these individualists? So, evolution and natural... The thing is that evolution is given to us by nature, comes from nature, and we see each generation with their qualities and so on. On the other hand, nature demands of us, along with this evolution, or maybe even against it, to come together, unite, connect, and with each and every generation to be more connected. And this is something that we're not doing for many years now, and therefore we're truly suffering. Well, maybe to bring a result of the development of our individualism, the epidemic that we see, the fact that human life was valued more than economical development by government, this is a miracle. Suddenly, the governments, they were concerned with a small amount of lives and put economics in second place. Where in the past it was not that way. It's not that our rulers changed what happened, the upper force. We can't talk about the upper force because it controls everything, it exists, but we can't take it into account because we don't have interaction with it. We don't have any, and that the rulers, the leaders had taken into consideration the lives of simple people. It's because the virus does not differentiate between people. It goes over all levels. We saw that the Prime Minister of England got sick, and Hollywood stars, and simple technicians and workers, and so on, men and women. Meaning, besides the younger generation, the virus it's spread among everyone, and therefore governments had no other choice but to send everyone home. Only this way was it possible to stop this pandemic. Otherwise, everyone would infect everyone, and we don't know how many deaths and casualties we would have, and how would it end. And afterwards, when one country does it, it's impossible for another country not to do it. We see countries like Belarus and who else? Sweden, I think, that didn't want to be a part of stopping to limit their citizens, in short. I don't think that they benefited as a result, but these are specific countries with a specific population and society. So, okay, I have a few questions from listeners, viewers. I collected them. Short. I'll do it like a blitz. Short answers. I'll try. If I have to change myself, then why do I need society for? I'll lock myself at home, meditate, pray for the world. Will it help? No. You can change yourself only being in society, under the influence of society, adjusting yourself to society. If I need a society in order to change myself, my qualities, why did the virus lock us in, separating us from each other? How should I build my connections with people from afar? Yes, the virus, it isolated us from one another in order for us to acknowledge how interconnected we are and how much this connection has to undergo some positive changes. We understand that the ego is something natural, so we can't destroy it, but how do you use it correctly? Above the ego, in oppositeness to it, to build the quality of love and bestow. We already have a global mind. We can see it from our fight with the coronavirus. Information spreads in all countries. How do we achieve a global heart to feel everyone? What emotions and feelings are you talking about? Those doctors that are working 16 hours a day saving lives, aren't they doing it out of what they feel? Many can not go to work. I don't think that doctors can not go to work. I don't think that they themselves decided on this, even though that we see that the profession itself, the circumstances themselves position people in a state of self-sacrifice. But the thing is that the time has come where we understand that we're interconnected, and no government can care only for itself, because the virus practically has no borders. How does it appear? We have no idea. How does it pass from person to person, from place to place? And everyone completely participates in this. And this is the best achievement up until now that this pandemic has. From history, we see that cardinal changes in history are related to unique individuals. Napoleon, Lenin, others. Did anything change? What is the role of the simple person and a leader? No, I don't think that there will be the role of leaders now. Now there will be the role of the idea. The idea is what the world needs. And if the world will accept this idea, then accordingly it will start changing in correspondence with it, and it will achieve its next level of development, where the integral connection between everyone. Can a small group of people become an example for all of mankind, speeding things up our involvement? Yes. But for this, they have to really work together in a correct way. Why is it important to save the lives of people? Maybe nature sent this virus in order to reduce the Earth population to 1 billion. Then there will be enough resources for everyone. The planet will get cleaner. Maybe saving lives is against nature. Maybe we should listen to what it says. The thing is that our planet can feed 2 and 3 times more people. This is not the problem. The problem is how humanity is organized. Humanity is organized incorrectly, and therefore many people are starving and so on. It all depends on the organization. Organization doesn't depend on the amount of people, but on their mutual consent. Thank you very much, and until our next meeting, all the best.
Всем добрый день. Мы продолжаем.
Hello, and welcome to our course, The Post-Corona Era. As always, with us is Dr. Malika Lightman.
И который будет отвечать
Hello,
на
everyone.
ваши вопросы.
He will answer all of your questions. Our topic today is
Сегодня никто не любит учиться. Свобода выбора.
freedom of choice.
Интересная тема.
I hope that it is an interesting topic. We'll talk about we'll touch very complicated questions, and I hope that the answers will be concrete, not philosophical. There's lots of information about this in many books, freedom of choice, what does it consist of, but there are things that we already know. Suppose our foundation as human beings, our basis is our DNA, our genes, and they actually define everything, our physiology, and also it said that it determines our political views, inclinations towards suicide, towards one thing or another. Do you agree? That genes determine everything. Man's qualities. What difference does it make? Genes or something else, some other particles, waves, elements? We have certain given qualities that control us, thanks to which people have qualities, traits, approach to life, and so on. Of course, we can call it genes. But each such foundation has such basis. This appears as genes genes control your qualities. Some qualities that you can change, some you can't. Suppose a child is born in a family of egoists where the only thing that interests them is consumerism and money. And suppose he also has such qualities like being stingy, then he has zero chances of growing up to be an altruist, for example. I don't think so. I disagree. We see in nature also opposite qualities. And our teacher, Balasulam, also writes about this, that you can see an inversion. Many times we see how in Russia, in aristocrat families, you had revolutionists born, or you can see children that are going against the opinion or the direction of their parents, and therefore the qualities of the parents can be revealed in an inversed way in the children. If someone's stingy is inclined toward that, no, you don't have to change that. It's not if you can or can't change it. You don't have to change it. Of course, I think that this is a given that exists in us. These are called the first 9 sfirot in every person, in every partsuf, in every soul, and therefore there's no point in changing this. But we simply have to learn how to correctly use these qualities, like, for example, stinginess. Yeah, but truth, integrity, love, hate, these concepts, are they formed by society, or are these certain inclinations in a person? Surrounding environment. No, surrounding environment, but when they land on this kind of basis. But then what is this basis that develops the seeds of the surrounding that it grows in? And here you have many other parameters. The qualities of the parents and the grandparents, the family, and the contemporary environment, society, meaning between them you have all these different types of interactions. If I was born from certain parents and I grow up in a certain environment, with the children from my class and different other parameters depending on what society I grew up in, religious, secular, Western, Eastern. There are many, many parameters that I get even unconsciously, but they influence me. Yeah, many givens, parameters. We're talking about genes, we're talking about the qualities that we're born with that don't change, we're talking about society, and there's a fourth factor, like external influences could be, suppose, pandemic like now, or economical crisis, or cataclysms, natural cataclysms, that can influence the development of one or another kind of inclination. If a person's inclined towards stinginess, so if he lives in a country where there's not enough, where there's enough, like in Western Europe, then that does not appear in him. But when there is an extreme situation, this kind of quality can appear in him. Yeah, these four factors, they influence a person at the same time. No, you can't say that. They influence, they're always in action, but each of them to a different degree. And it doesn't depend only on the person, but also on the society and the historic period that he lives in. And I'd say that even on a global level, that it's the plan of creation. So it's very hard to say what depends on what and when. Which of these factors influences man's development to the most? Hard to say that too. Depends at what time and what place. What has a stronger influence over the development of man, genes or society? Genes. So genes have a stronger influence than society. Yes, to come under from the influence of genes is very not simple. And society, the thing is that society, it's very smeared. It could influence you in different ways. At the same time, you also have here concrete forces of it's very hard to exactly say. Also, when Baal HaSulam writes about it in his article The Freedom, he also writes about this in general lines pretty much, because there are many parameters that if we take some person, there's no point in getting into this, I think. I want to ask about how will this pandemic influence the development of man? How does it coincide with man's freedom of choice, as if it takes away our freedom of choice? Because we behave in accordance with those circumstances that we live in. We had no free choice before either. We never had any free choice. We only acted in name of our ego, taking into consideration one or another kind of limitation that the environment puts upon us. But actually, we acted only under the influence of one factor, our ego, in order to satisfy it in every given moment. But there was at least the illusion of freedom of choice. You're right, there's no illusion now, but specifically because there's no illusion now, we have the ability to come to a true freedom of choice. So, from your point of view, man's freedom of choice, what does it consist of? To rise above our ego that completely ties us and does not allow us to be free in any way, meaning freedom of choice is first of all freedom of your own ego that is given to us from above. Why is it written in many places that the freedom of choice is only in choosing the correct environment? It's when I have to come under from the influence of my ego that controls me in everything, then I already look for, with the help of what means can I do this, and turns out that you can only do it by building the correct environment that would correctly influence me. Suppose if we're talking about society, any society, egoistic society, reception or receiving from society gives me pleasure, and giving to society, well, makes me suffer. I don't want to give, or I want to give, but to the measure to which I receive from society, to the measure to which it gives me pleasure. If suddenly certain values change in society and society demands, says that it's good to give, that if you give, you'll receive this and that, and I go against my ego, is this the freedom of choice that you're talking about? Freedom of choice is to put yourself under the influence of the correct society in which the quality of bestowal is considered the upper highest, that controls the quality of reception, and then in the same way, putting myself under its influence, becoming integrated in this society, like a small child, simply putting myself in its hands, I can also be able to reach a state where the quality of bestowal will be important for me even more than quality of reception. So, the conflict of going against my natural inclinations, where I only want to receive, and on the other hand, society gives me certain values that it's good to give to society. And the conflict between these two awakens some kind of spectrum of actions where I'm free. Yeah. There are many stories about how people sacrifice themselves to the benefit of others, like doctors working around the clock, many other examples. Many rich people are willing to sacrifice their money. You also say that we have to sacrifice our ego. Is this our freedom of choice to sacrifice our ego? No, it's something a bit different, even though that I appreciate all of these kinds of things, but I don't think that this is the corrected state of humanity. The thing is that humanity has to correct its attitude toward each other, its attitude toward the ego, toward altruism, and it's not in any way in relation to... There are people that are willing, out of their ego, are willing to kill others in order for them to preserve nature, or not to litter, or whatever, for the sake of ecology. We see that all of these movements in favor of nature, clean air, the environment, they're all completely egoistic. So much so that there are people with tremendous egos there that are willing to end the life of anyone else that it seems to them that he has any different kind of opinion, that a different understanding of what good means. It is the ego. So you think that help in these extreme situations like the pandemic or other economical crises is natural, and this is not considered a correction. Yeah. This is how it's supposed to be. In normal situations, we should treat each other normally. No, we simply have to understand what our nature is, and the measure to which it collides us with one another, so that we will correctly characterize man's actions. If it hurts me to look at someone else, at some other ill person, and therefore I pay money in order for him to get better, I'm actually not healing him this way, but I soften my pain. I do it in order for it to stop hurting me. So here there are much deeper corrections of our nature that we're talking about. So, I have to do good deeds not because it hurts or I identify with these people, but that it has to be higher than this. Even if I have no relation to them, I have to do it for some higher goal, precisely because of that. So the cause and consequence have to be changed. Okay, we'll talk about this. It's a very interesting point. All people by nature are conformists, meaning they are willing to follow others, follow society, more than to realize some kind of independence of their own. Even Erich Fromm, a psychologist, writes that most of the people don't even understand their need to yield to society. They think that they're individualists and that they came to their own opinion as a result of their own thoughts and scrutinies, and that it coincides with society is just a coincidence. We are a complete result of our environment. What could there be in a person that is his own? Where will he take it from? Please tell me. Well, maybe it's an illusion, but every person feels himself as an individual. Yeah, as an individual, this is given to us by nature. And what now? Well, if you ask any person, he'll say, I took this decision to go to this country, I took that decision to choose this or that profession. Of course, he took this decision, and everyone else around him thinks that it's so, but where did he get this decision from? If we'll dig deeper in, we'll see that a person has nothing of his own. Okay, I have a series of questions, if we could answer them in, briefly. I'll try. We have time. First question. Conformism, first of all, consists of the opinion of others being very important for us, even if we don't acknowledge that. Why is it so? Why is the opinion of strangers so important to us that we disrespect anyway? How to explain this paradox? It's really a paradox. On the one hand, I deeply don't care about others. On the other hand, they're very important to me in this regard that I want for them to approve me, to accept me. Their opinion is important to me. Yes. Why? On the one hand, they're not important to me in any way. On the other hand, it's important for them to accept me. If even a small mouse, dog, whatever around me in relation to me will show some kind of disregard toward me, suppose it really, aggravate me, bother me, it'll bother me. But it has a purpose, right? Yes, it's in order for us to be able to reach the correct kind of connection with the surrounding world, for us to have a mutual good kind of communication, that I will interact correctly with the world, will correctly influence it, and the world will influence me correctly, so that I and the world will be in mutual harmony. So, if I wouldn't have cared about society at all, I couldn't change myself. This is the most important thing. And because of that, I wouldn't have been able to feel the globality and integrality of the general nature. It's known that wars and so on get much more screen time than reports about people that treat each other favorably, help each other, trying to prevent cruelty and so on. And it's more appealing to viewers. Why? If I look on TV, for example, some kind of show that tells about horrors, wars, collisions, some very extreme states, between people someplace, it bothers me more because I could become a part of these events and it could harm me. And the good states that talk about, people are getting together, sitting, talking, singing something, or that they're working together or helping, it does not harm me and it doesn't threaten me in any way. And therefore, my attitude towards it is soft, liberal, and maybe even a bit disrespectful. There were attempts to create good news, to show only good news, but it's not popular. Of course not. It doesn't bother people. A person lives off negative news, suffering, tragedies. Look at what happens in music, art, wherever you look. Wherever you have serious compositions, they're always tragic. And comedies and so on, it's all, light. People like it in between stuff. Next question. In the USSR, there was no cruelty on the screens, but I wouldn't say that people were less cruel. Why? I don't think that in such a society like in the former USSR, the press, movies, theater influence a person. They understood very well that there is a tremendous gap between life and what they're being fed by the government, and therefore they didn't accept it. But still, it says that there is such psychological research of how much all these things, the media influences a person, and there was an iron curtain between man and the mass media, meaning everything that comes from the radio, from television, it went through a filter, and people understood that they're being fed with something, and what do I have to take from this? Maybe just a grain of information, but that's it. And here, we are getting tons of information from all sides. It's all bought and sold, distorted, and we don't even imagine how much. Obviously, that what we hear from on television, read, see, hear on the radio, and so on, all of this is distorted information that different interested parties are pouring on us. But since it doesn't come from one source like the party in Russia, therefore it's hard for us to deal with it. And therefore, whether we like it or not, we're under their influence. We choose out of several thoughts one, even though that it too is false. Public opinion taught people to live according to the principle of on the one hand, socialism, on the other hand, there was capitalism, it's all falling apart. How not to err building a new social... It's a problem. After the pandemic, it's a problem. It's just the first blow. It's not even a blow. It'll just shake us up a bit. And still, this pandemic that didn't end yet, but suppose it will cover us in a horrific way. We'll see a torn up, ruined world that we can't control with our previous means, by our previous means. Not factories, not airplanes, nothing will work properly because everything has to go through a completely new phase of reconstruction, adaptation to the new revealing circumstances. The coronavirus made the world integral, to some extent, somewhat. But from that, we already understand that this world that is demanding of us to build this coronavirus, we're not adapted to it, and we have no idea how can we return to the past, and we can't return to the past. So if we can't return to the past, then 2 billion people remain unemployed. How will they feed themselves? Or how will we meet their basic needs and so on? To this day, governments are spending billions and billions, hundreds of billions of dollars in order to somehow, quiet all this. These dollars, they're disappearing. They won't come back. We won't be able to demand them, to ask to return them to the treasury. And we simply see how the leaders, they only have power but no brains. It's a big problem. We'll talk about this on our next shows, the economical aspect of the pandemic. Another question: do I understand correctly that bring myself closer to keeping the laws of nature is to learn how to receive from society only what I need and to give what I can? Not to the measure of what you can, but everything that you can do in order to bestow and what you need in order to exist on a normal basic level. So this way I bring myself closer to the laws of nature? Yes. This means that I am in balance with nature, giving everything to it and receiving only for the sake of my animate existence. I give on the human level everything. I receive on the level of animals only what I need. But our feelings, emotion, everything that you have to give to society and to receive only what's necessary for your existence on a basic level. Okay, we'll scrutinize this. But the pandemic will bring us to this. If not this one, then the next one. So where is our free choice then? This is our free choice. You're pushed to your happiness. But I thought that it's without that. Please, you have now the opportunity from seeing what's going on and being able to think and do something to equalize yourself with this condition of the complete integral responsibility. But the problem isn't to keep this or not. Before that, there's the question of, why do I have to believe all of this? Maybe it's all untrue. No, this comes from ordinary laws. There's nothing new about this. It's very logical. If you'll start calculating everything that's going on with humanity due to humanity's ego, you will see that this is a force that simply pushes us into our grave. On the other hand, in what way can we act if we are on one small planet? And what do we have left to do? The only thing left to do is to get together and to decide how to exist together under these circumstances. Last question. Despite our egoistic nature, under the influence of society, we can cultivate certain values that are in opposition to our egoistic inclinations. Is this what the freedom of choice consists of? Yeah, very simple. I think that is clear to everyone. Thank you very much. Until we meet again, all the best. Thank you.